What if I told you that one single man, not a president, not a king, not a general, once saved an entire country from complete financial collapse? And what if I told you that same man did it twice, made billions doing it, and most people today have never even heard the full story? His name was J.P. Morgan, and this is the story of how one man became more powerful than the government itself, using nothing but money, strategy, and a level of nerve that most of us cannot even imagine. Stay with me, because by the end of this, the way you think about money, power, and who really runs the world will never be the same again. John Pierpont Morgan was born in 1837 in Hartford, Connecticut, into a family that already understood one thing most people never figure out. Money is not just for buying things. Money is influence. Money is control. His father, Junius Morgan, was a successful banker, and from a very young age, young Pierpont was taught that the real game is not how much you earn. The real game is how much you control.
And here is the first lesson from his life. It is not about how much money you make. It is about how much money and power you are able to control. Pierpont studied in Europe, learned multiple languages, trained under some of the best financial minds of his era, and returned to America with one goal: to become the most powerful banker the world had ever seen. And the world would soon find out he was not joking. Now here is where it gets interesting, and a little dark. It is 1861. America is at war with itself. The Civil War has just begun. Young Morgan is 24 years old, and instead of fighting, he is doing business. A man named Arthur Eastman approached Morgan with a deal. The U.S. Army had 5,000 old, defective rifles sitting in one warehouse. These guns were so dangerous that the Army itself had already condemned them. They had rejected them. They did not want them. Eastman bought those rifles for $3.50 each. Then he sold them back to a different department of the very same U.S. Army for $22 each.
Morgan helped finance the deal. The soldiers who received those guns, some of those guns blew off their own fingers when fired. When this came to light, there was an investigation. Morgan was summoned. He paid a fine, and then he walked away. And here is the second lesson. The system is not always fair. People with access to the right information and the right connections can profit from situations that destroy ordinary people. This is why financial education is not optional. If you do not understand the game, you will always be the one paying the price. Morgan learned something from that scandal. He learned to be smarter, more careful, more powerful, and he never found himself on the wrong side of an investigation again. He became the investigation. By the 1870s and 1880s, the railroad industry was the internet of its time. Whoever controlled the railroads controlled the movement of everything: food, coal, steel, soldiers, people. And the railroads were a mess. Different companies were at war with each other, cutting prices, going bankrupt, cheating investors. It was financial chaos.
Morgan stepped in. He did not just invest in railroads, he reorganized them. He brought competing companies together, forced them to stop the price wars, and created stable, profitable systems. This process became known on Wall Street as Morganization. And here is the third lesson. Chaos creates opportunity for those who are calm and strategic. When everyone else is panicking, the one with a clear plan wins. Morgan did not fight the chaos. He organized it and charged for the privilege. By the time he was done, J.P. Morgan controlled or influenced more than 100,000 miles of American railroad track. One man, 100,000 miles. That is more than the entire road system of most countries today. Now here is the part of this story that most history books skim past, because this is where it gets deeply uncomfortable. It is 1895. Grover Cleveland is the President of the United States of America. The country's gold reserves have dropped to a level so dangerously low that the government cannot guarantee the value of the American dollar.
Banks are panicking. Investors are running. The entire financial system of the world's most powerful growing nation is on the edge of a total collapse. President Cleveland calls his advisors. They have no solution. They go to Congress. Congress is deadlocked. The government of the United States of America is helpless. So, JP Morgan gets on a train to Washington, D.C. He walks into the White House. He sits across from the President of the United States. And then he tells the most powerful elected official in America exactly what is going to happen. Morgan and his partners, including the European Rothschilds banking family, would supply the United States government with $62 million worth of gold. In return, they would receive government bonds, which they would then sell to the public at a profit. The government had no choice. They accepted. Morgan and his partners made approximately $7 million in profit from that deal, in a matter of months, from saving a country that could not save itself. And here is the fourth lesson. Liquidity is everything. The person who has access to cash or resources when everyone else is desperate holds all of the power.
This is why building an emergency reserve and understanding how credit and capital works is not just advice, it is survival. And here is the part that should make you pause. Morgan did not need to help America. He chose to, because he understood that a stable America was good for his business. He was not being generous. He was being strategic. There is a difference. And understanding that difference is what separates people who build wealth from people who simply donate it. If 1895 was extraordinary, what happened in 1907 was almost impossible to believe. America was in another financial panic. Banks were failing. People were lining up in the streets trying to withdraw their money. The stock market was crashing. Businesses were closing. The entire country was on the edge of a financial catastrophe that could have been worse than anything seen before. JP Morgan was 70 years old. Most men his age were resting. He locked himself and the most powerful bankers in America inside his private library in New York City.
For days, they barely slept. They ate there. They argued there. Morgan sat in a chair, smoking cigars, playing solitaire, and one by one, forcing every major banker in the room to commit their money to stabilizing the system. At one point, he literally locked the doors so the bankers could not leave until they agreed. When they finally reached a deal, Morgan walked out. The panic began to slow, and America stabilized. He had done what the entire United States government could not do. Again. And here is the fifth lesson. In a crisis, the one with resources, resolve, and a network becomes the most important person in the room. Build your network before you need it. Build your reserves before the storm comes. Because when the storm arrives, it is already too late to start. But here is where the story takes yet another turn. Because power like Morgan's never stays unchallenged forever. In 1912, the United States government launched what became known as the Pujo Committee hearings.
Senators and investigators were trying to determine whether a small group of powerful bankers, led by Morgan, had quietly taken control of the entire American financial system. The investigation revealed something that stunned the public. JP Morgan and his close associates held directorships, meaning board seats and control positions, in banks, insurance companies, railroads, and major corporations with combined resources worth more than $22 billion. In today's terms, that figure would be in the trillions. When Morgan himself was called to testify, a lawyer named Samuel Untermeyer asked him a question that became one of the most quoted moments in financial history. He asked Morgan whether commercial credit was based primarily on money or property. Morgan answered, "No, sir. The first thing is character." The lawyer pushed back. "Before money or property?" Morgan answered again. "Before money or anything else. Money cannot buy it."
And here is the sixth lesson. Reputation and trust are your most valuable financial assets. Morgan built an empire, not just on capital, but on the belief that his word was iron. People lent to him, partnered with him, and followed him because they trusted him completely. In business and in life, your character is your credit score. Morgan died just 1 year later, in 1913, in Rome, at the age of 75. When his estate was calculated, Even John D. Rockefeller, the wealthiest man in the world at the time, reportedly said, "And to think he was not even a rich man." Rockefeller meant it as a compliment, because Morgan's power was never just in what he owned. It was in what he controlled, what he influenced, and the trust that the entire world had placed in him. So what do we take from the life of J.P. Morgan? He was not a saint. He made deals that hurt people. He profited from chaos. He operated in a world without the financial regulations we have today, and he used that freedom aggressively.
But he also understood money at a level that most people never will. And from his life, there are lessons that are just as true today as they were in the 1800s. It is not about how much you earn. It is about how much you control. Cash is king, especially in a crisis. Your network determines your net worth. Chaos is not a disaster for those who are prepared. It is an opportunity. Reputation is a currency. Spend it wisely. The system rewards those who understand how it works, so study the system. J.P. Morgan did not just play the game, he rewrote the rules. And whether you admire him or not, understanding how he did it might just be the most valuable financial education you ever receive. If this story opened your eyes, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want more stories like this, ones that are real, raw, and revealing, you know what to do. The world of money has always had its giants. The question is, are you watching from the crowd, or are you paying attention closely enough to learn from them? See you in the next one.